welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim, here today being joined virtually by Lance. What's up, Lance?
Oh, it's going so well. How are you, Tim?
Going well today. Lance, this interview is a lot of fun. We speak to a fellow named Jared. He does a podcast called Even the Podcast is Afraid that has recently been acquired by the Crawlspace Media Network.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a deviation from true crime. While they do talk about true crime, they also focus on the paranormal, the unexplained. They analyze creepypasta stories, and it's Jared Ordis, Nick Porchetta, and Samantha Vasquez. Those are the three hosts, and Jared is the sort of the ringmaster of the whole thing. And they have a ton of really fun episodes, and they just got a new website as well, eventhepodcastisafraid.com.
Great. And Lance, this interview is fun. We recorded it at night, actually during a full moon that you astutely point out during the interview. And it's a little bit of a different vibe than what we usually do. It's we don't talk much true crime. We talk a little paranormal. We talk a little bit about your the haunted house that you just moved into.
Yeah, and Jared gives me some good advice, some solid advice about living in a haunted house. He himself, I guess, lived in a haunted house, has a couple of really maybe some unnerving type stories, and basically said that I'm in for it. I haven't been here long enough, so I don't really know what's really about to go down. So appreciate his sound advice.
That's right. You are in for it. And so aren't you, the listener. So thank you very much for listening to this, and I really hope you enjoy this. Kind of a lighter thing than what we normally do, so it should be welcome, I think, during this time. And check out Even the Podcast is Afraid. It's also right along those same lines, a little lighter than the dark true crime stuff that we usually bring you, so it's a little nice to, take a deep breath sometimes. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Welcome to Crawlspace, Jared of Even the Podcast is Afraid. What is going on, Jared?
Nothing much. Living the dream.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You can say you're living the dream. And not only welcome to Crawlspace this particular episode, but welcome to Crawlspace
Thank you.
with your podcast.
Thank you. We are really excited about joining the Crawlspace family.
Well, we are thrilled to have this show on the Crawlspace Network. You had originally contacted us because on the website there's a little spot there that says perhaps your show would be a fit. And the thing that really stood out to Tim and I about your show, Even the Podcast is Afraid, is how well it's branded. The title's hilarious. You go between true crime and I guess maybe some urban legend, some creepypasta. So there's a lighter element to it, a little bit more of a supernatural element to it. And I think that's something that's really appealing to us as a network, to expand outside of the cold cases and violent crime and, missing persons, to get a little bit more expansive in the genre.
Oh, yeah, and it's, I appreciate that. Thanks for the branding. That makes me feel great as I did all the artwork. I'll take a bow. But, we did something a little different, we like true crime and we like paranormal and we like the unexplained, the weird shit out there. Mm-hmm. And instead of just, serial killers and cults, like right now we're doing this stuff with McAfee, or we just got done with it. And we want to do stuff like, what if we did something like Wolf on Wall Street? It's still crime, but we can still bring those comedic elements of making fun of the dumbasses in crime or who are criminals that do stupid things. The paranormal stuff is just one of those things I've always been fascinated with. And there's some weird things out there, and some of it does have truth behind it. I think every folklore has some sort of element of truth, or otherwise it wouldn't have been a story to be told.
I like that. We've definitely debated that ourselves. Where did this podcast come from? Like, what is the inspiration?
Well, the original podcast was actually not named Even the Podcast is Afraid. It was actually named Talking Trash with Ordis. I used to do streaming on Twitch. I used to play horror games. So I just started a podcast. I'd been wanting to start one for some time, and the original intent of the podcast was to have different individuals from Twitch and YouTube We come on and we talk about different topics going on within the horror genre or nerd culture or anything like that. And then after about 3 episodes in, it's like, oh, let's talk about conspiracies. And then it started changing from there. And Nick, who is actually a co-host on Even the Podcast is Afraid, he was one of the first guests. He was actually the first guest on the very first episode. And it only took about 4 episodes in, and he became a co-host for Storytime. And Storytime was essentially the true crime podcast. And it just got to be so much where we were doing 3 shows under one tagline. It got very confusing, and we took all the stuff that we really enjoyed talking about, and we finally rebranded after episode 21 to Even the Podcast is Afraid.
So you just mentioned your co-host, Nick, and you have another co-host as well, Samantha. So that's Nick Porchetta and Samantha Vasquez. How did you get Samantha on board for Even the Podcast is Afraid?
She actually was a guest. She came on as a guest with another Twitch streamer, and she was on YouTube. She's part of the Wicked Sisters, and they played horror games and things like that on there and made videos, jump scares. And she came on there. We hit it off really, really well, and then me and Nick talked about it and thought she would be a good fit to come on to talk with us when we do our Creepypasta episodes. And for a while there, she was only on our Creepypasta episodes, and now she's started to really jump into our paranormal cases, and she's done some side crime episodes with us, and so she's really jumped gun-ho into it, really enjoying it.
Okay, for those in our audience who are not aware of the term creepypasta and what that means, can you fill them in, please?
It's people basically get to write their own stories on the internet, of all places, the black hole. And creepypasta.com has thousands of stories, and most of them are horror. They can be funny horror stories. I mean, all different kinds. But if anybody's ever heard of Slender Man, Slender Man is a creepypasta. He originated from there, and that's eventually what blew up what we now know as creepypasta.
And what is your fascination with creepypasta? Because the 3 of you, it sounds like, have a sort of a macabre twist, a macabre element to your personalities. Is that what it is about creepypasta, or is it the fact that you read these things off the cuff and then you get to react to them sort of in real time on the show? A lot of questions there all at once, but I'm fascinated because I honestly hadn't heard of creepypasta until about like 2 years ago, and I already knew about Slender Man. I had known about Slender Man for a long time, but did not know where that, like, the genesis was creepypasta. What started it all for you?
Well, creepypasta I got more invested in as time went on because I'm a huge horror fan. Been a horror fan since I was a little kid. I think the first horror movie I ever saw was Child's Play, and I think I was around 5 years old, and my dad rented Child's Play for me.
It's a kid's movie.
It's a great kids movie.
You know what's funny? We could geek out about horror movies because my question there about creepypasta was so goddamn like roundabout, long-winded. I feel bad that you have the I feel bad that you have to answer it. But if you want to geek out about horror movies, let me know.
Oh, sure. But creepypasta, I guess, me being a horror fan, like I said, when I was streaming on Twitch, that's all I played was horror games. And so just the element of being able to go and read something horror, because I love Stephen King as well. And so to be able to read something that other people have conjured up in their own imaginations, or some of them are based off folklore that they write, it's nice to be able to see an element or a space where people can literally write about horror. And so for us to be able to get on there and for us to really like to read them is that we don't know what the story is about that we pick. We pick them randomly. I think, well, Sam is the only one really that goes and reads hers because she wants to read and make sure it's a good story. Me and Nick randomly pick our creepypastas. We don't know what we're reading. We don't know what it's about. All we know is the title. And so it brings this interesting element to it of it's either going to be really great or it's going to be total shit.
Is there a rating system though? Maybe you guys could do like, just pick like sevens and above.
Well, we do a rating system on the show. We do 1 through 5 because we only release one creepypasta episode a month. And so we do like a 1 through 5, and we all get to rate it and express why we don't like it. And even if it's a really good one, we've had some that were like, it's a 5, but we still made fun of the story the entire way through it just because it's fun to do.
And when you say horror games, what exactly do you mean by that? You're speaking to someone who doesn't play many video games. I assume it's a video game.
Yeah, it's video games. Anything from Resident Evil to Outlast to Silent Hill. I mean, the horror game can go from a first-person angle to a third-person angle. I mean, generally, it's in the trope of what you would call a horror game. So I guess if you're looking at it from an angle of horror movies, it would generally be the same thing or genre on video games.
And you had mentioned before, and I wrote this down because I wanted to get a little clarification on it. You said that Samantha came from a background where she was part of the something sisters, and they did videos and jump scares. What is that? I mean, I know what a jump scare is, but is this an industry?
Yeah, they did Wicked Sisters, which is a YouTube channel, and they would do videos with them playing horror video games. And then they would edit those down into some of the best moments. And they would only be 20 to 30-minute videos. Some of them were even shorter than that. Or they would watch horror trailers for upcoming horror movies or independent horror movies. And the funny thing is that things would happen, and they're both very jumpy. So something would scare the shit out of them, and they would literally jump. It was like when I was streaming on Twitch. I know... Who was it? I think it was Lance that told me he didn't know much about Twitch.
I think I'm just a lot older than I want to admit to myself.
He's a lot older than me too. He's like 20 years older than me.
I'm 31, so
he's like 100 years older than you.
I know, seriously, 31. I think I was like born in 31.
The interesting part though with the whole Twitch thing is that everybody gets to do their own damn thing they want to do, whatever they want to play. And when I was streaming, there's a thing called bits on there, and the bits are people pay a certain amount to make things happen within your stream. So 100 bits is $1. And so for 100 bits, they could randomly make a jump scare scream that I don't know that's coming and make me jump and use my favorite word, shit. And so it was just a way of letting your viewers actually interact with you. So sort of the same line that Sam and them were doing for Wicked Sisters. Just there's no bits or anything involved. It's just people enjoyed them getting scared as they got to watch the videos.
That sounds amazing that this exists in the world. I love it.
It's fun.
All right. Well, what's your favorite paranormal topic?
Oh, man. That's tough.
Tim's hoping you say Bigfoot.
It's not Bigfoot.
Well, before maybe we get to that, do you think that, or maybe a better question is, why do you think true crime and paranormal stuff go together?
Well, it's one of the episodes we just got done doing, for instance, is the Bell Witch haunting, which is out of Adams, Tennessee. And it is actually the first recorded and one of the only recorded killings of an individual by a paranormal entity. And I think it can go hand in hand. I do believe in ghosts, and I do believe in the paranormal. And I think when you go into something like true crime, where you have some terrible things happen to people, who's to say that soul doesn't linger, or something, or remnant doesn't linger there?
Okay, well, I'm with you on that part, but wait, let's back up just a second here. What did you say? A paranormal entity killed somebody?
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
so out of. I feel like I'm so out of the loop with like pop culture or something. How do I not know this? What's YouTube?
What's YouTube? Well, it's a place where you can watch videos. No, yeah, there was the Bell Witch. Actually, was and still is probably one of the most popular, especially for paranormal investigators, because there's things that are very weird that are still going on at the Bell farm, and John Bell is who was actually supposedly murdered by this entity, whose supposed name is Kate Batts. But when we went through the episode, my theory does not linger on that it's a witch, that it's Indian burial ground, and I do believe that Indian burial ground should not be messed with. And John Bell and them, I do believe, messed with that. And I think that he was ultimately killed by a spirit.
Whoa. Okay, so wait, what happened? What happened with this this death?
So basically, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. The John Bell and his family moved from South Carolina and moved to Adams, Tennessee, where ultimately he bought 328 acres of land. And you're talking about, this is when Andrew Jackson was a general. So it's interesting because they started a farm. So the majority of this acreage was nothing but crops. And there was supposedly an actual grave for a Native American found that one of John Bell's sons had actually disturbed, and actually brought the skull up to the house. And John Bell had told his son Dewey to bury it back. He needed to put it back, and out of retaliation to his father, he takes the skull and slams it against the actual porch on the front of the house, and it breaks off the bottom jaw. Well, it also knocks out several teeth from the skull. And they do go back and actually bury the skull, and this is when the stuff starts happening. And it almost sounds demonic in nature, where they start hearing sounds beating on the walls. And eventually, the youngest daughter starts getting actually her ass whooped, basically. The entity is slapping her, beating her, hitting her. And John eventually starts getting very sick. His health continues to go down and down and down and down. It got even so popular during that time, Andrew Jackson actually visited the Bell farm and the Bell house and spent the night with some of his soldiers to see what was going on. And his account is things did happen to them that were not normal. And ultimately, John Bell, he died. And what they found beside him was a vial of a dark liquid, which could be arsenic, because arsenic was used at that time. But supposedly this entity said that she gave it to him and ended old Jack, as she called him, not John Bell's, life.
And to this day, the hauntings continue?
There is still some weird things that happen. They have found more Native American grave sites that they're actually looking at now, that the actual entire acreage that he bought could have been a massive burial ground where his house actually was. There's even a cave actually on his property that had Native Americans buried inside the cave.
Coming from a true crime background here for a moment, please indulge me, because I understand the lore of a Native American burial ground. Of course, poltergeist, everyone is familiar.
Yeah.
But what makes a Native American burial ground so automatically haunted?
We talked about it a little bit in the episode, and we also, talked about possibly some other theories and scenarios that could have been that there was nothing paranormal at all, that he could have actually been murdered by one of his own family members, or actually Kate Batts, who was his neighbor. But what makes the Native American burial ground stand out the most is that it is completely sacred, and most Native Americans are at one with Earth. They're at one with nature. I'm actually a quarter Creek Indian. So when, I see a lot of these different things that come up with the Native American burial ground, and I know it's something that's commonly used in horror movies, and it's because there's so many weird things that happen when people mess with them. I don't know 100%. I mean, it's like anything with a ritual. I guess if you wanted to get into conspiracy theories as well, I mean, when you look at something like the Freemasons or the Golden Eagles, they all had these ritualistic things dealing with Satan and looking at a skull to make yourself look as like, okay, you are going to die one day. This is your mortality. But no other person that I can think of, or tribe or community, was more at one with nature than I would think of than the Native Americans.
Okay, but in that one specific instance, you said, oh, he could have been killed by someone in his family or his neighbor.
He could have.
That sounds more likely to me, just, coming from this background. I am curious. I'm not saying I don't believe in ghosts either, though. But I am curious. Have you seen a ghost?
I've lived in 3 haunted houses, actually.
Oh boy, here we go. Lance just moved into a haunted house. I'm gonna go on mute now.
Yeah, okay. Tim's on mute. That's good. No, I was actually I texted Tim and I said I have to ask him about my potentially haunted house here. If you've lived in 3 haunted houses, Jared.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the creepypasta stuff in a little bit, but I didn't expect the conversation to go this way. I have to take advantage of the moment. The home
Yes.
that I live in with my girlfriend now was built prior to 1830. It's on the maps starting at 1830, so that's the first documented date. We found a box of old documents, old mortgages, a letter from the governor of Massachusetts, which was assigning someone who was connected to this house a colonel rank in the Union Army. A lot of like historic significance and a lot of local significance in this house. The family was pretty ingrained in the community here, and most of them are buried right down the street. I'd say probably a 5-minute walk at the most down the street. Now, we've had a couple of small, I don't even want to say, I'll say occurrences, and I just want to get your opinion on these things.
I'm ready.
Okay, and you can tell when I get uncomfortable when I talk about things like this because I'll do a lip smack because I'm considering the ramifications here.
I'll do one for you in anticipation.
Thank you. Thank you. So the most recent thing that's happened, most recent.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Please.
Can we implore me and Jared as the jury right now?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Let's make a game out of it.
Yeah. I'll just give you the moments that have happened and yeah. We'll throw it to the jury.
Yeah, and the audience is the third member of the jury, just in case we tie.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
Gotcha. So the latest thing that happened is a door in between our bedroom and this other room that my girlfriend's using for like a art studio. There's a door that goes between the 2 rooms, and that door opens on its own. I'll just say it opens on its own. It's happened twice. And when it's shut, the doorknob sort of wiggles.
So the doorknob actually moves.
The doorknob, we haven't been able to catch it. We've heard it. We've heard it. You hear it's the same sound you'd hear if you were to go to the doorknob and give it a gentle wiggle. You're not reefing on the thing. You're giving it a gentle wiggle.
So it sounds like someone trying to check if it's like locked or not.
Not even that extreme. More like deliberate up down. Now the house is kind of crooked. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's 1830. It's had a lot of time to settle.
Yeah, a lot of creaks in old New England houses. A lot of, the wood is bent over the years, depending on where things have been placed over the years. It's quite remarkable, actually.
Well, I will say, and then I'll pass it off to you guys for this one. I will say I had expected to hear the creaks, the settling. I haven't heard anything that's creaky or settling. I've actually heard no noises other than this doorknob.
So yeah, the door could be because of draft, with it being an older home. One of the houses that I lived in that was haunted was built in the mid to late 1800s, and that one only stayed at for 4 months because I had so much stuff happening. I left. With yours, is that the only thing that's happening though? Is just the door?
No. That was the latest thing that's happened.
Okay.
Let's revisit your drafty theory. The windows are brand new. There's no draft in here. If anything, it gets too hot.
Okay.
Okay, have you ever experienced something like that, Jared, in one of the 3 haunted houses you've lived in?
Yes, the house that I'm going to use the one comparable to yours, since it's an older home built in the 1800s, and only one of the homes that I lived in was actually built in the 1800s, and that's the only one that I'd had enough and actually said, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." There's stuff started very slowly. It was nothing that just gained up. How long have you been in the house?
This is going to be 1 week and 5 days.
Oh shit, you ain't even got there yet. When I was in
That's
that
good to
house,
know, Jared. That's good to know.
if it continues, it will build up. It took about 4 to 5 months. I think it was 4 months that I moved out. If not, it was 5 months. But when the stuff started happening there, it slowly was footsteps. You could hear the stairs because where we were staying was upstairs. My dad was across the hall and I was in the other room. And then there was another room attached to that one. And the only way to get to that room was through another door through the room I was staying in. And it started with footsteps on the stairs that you could hear. And then you could kind of hear the door moving in the hall, to where my door would slowly eventually and start opening by itself. I'll give you that, and it wasn't a draft, as I later found out.
And this would happen repeatedly?
It happened on regular occurrences, yeah.
What did you mean, as I would later find out?
I was trying to avoid that question, Tim.
It started as more like a residual haunting, which a residual haunting is typically a ghost that constantly does the same thing almost over and over, like it's reliving its life. And so it just constantly the same thing. So it'd be doors or lights or whatever. And in the beginning, it started with just the doors and the footsteps. And of course, I'm staying in this old ass house. And at the time I was working for a restaurant. So I was coming home at, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And a lot of this stuff would start happening because I haven't gone to bed yet. I was staying up late. So I would actually hear this stuff happening. And eventually it got to the point where the door, instead of opening slowly, it started slinging open. So it was faster. And then it sounded like the footsteps would get harder and harder and harder. And then the other door on the other side of the room would open up. It took about a month before the doors started slamming. But things would get cold in the room. I had actually come home one time from work, opened up the door, turned on the light, and there was an indention in my bed at the end of the bed.
An indentation, like
It's
someone had been
there.
sitting there.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And I remember I called my girlfriend, who's actually my wife now. She would never go in the house, period. She would not go in the house at all. And I actually left. I opened up the door, saw that, said, nope, closed the door, left, and went to her house and spent the night because, it's 11 o'clock at night. I called her. I was like, I'm coming to your house.
Yeah.
And I've heard whispers. I've heard things said. I've had the TV go on and off by itself. I've had lights turn off on by itself. Lights flicker. Oh, yeah. And my dad didn't believe me.
What about the whispers? Tell me more before we get to your dad. Tell me about the whispers.
I think we're running out of time, Tim. I think we're about to wrap this up.
No. Wait, we got to hear about the whispers.
No, the whispers is you couldn't really make out what it is, but you could hear something talking to you faintly. I've had my foot grabbed in that house when I was laying in the bed. I've had something touch my face too in that house.
Well, who wouldn't want to touch that face?
I mean, look at it.
Well, just the beard.
All right, now let me pose a question here. We got to get back to the trial still, but Jared, could maybe hypothetically, could it be you that's haunted and not these houses you've moved into?
Yes, because the house we're living in now is actually the third house, and this house was built in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we've had weird shit happen here.
Oh, that's reassuring. Just don't.
Even my wife is not really a believer, but she's like, "What was that?" And she's like, "Jared, I swear to God, I will leave this fucking house."
So when we're able to all get together and we have our first Crawlspace media network gathering where all of the members come over to my house and we have a cookout, you're not invited. No offense, but we're not taking your hitchhiker.
See, that's the problem is while everybody's eating, I'm going to want to walk around your house.
All right, so let me give you another incident that I can pose to the jury. Just recently, and I don't know if this was just something that we didn't notice, but I was walking our little dog. He likes to go out at like 11:30 or midnight. That's his last going out for the day, and we have a basement. It's not a finished basement. It's from 1830, so it's small. It's mostly granite and other rocks. I can't remember the exact rocks that it's made out of. It doesn't matter.
They're rocks.
They're rocks, yeah.
Oh, it matters.
It could matter. It could matter. There's been this, I feel ridiculous saying it, there's been this blue glow, slight blue glow in the basement. I saw it at night, and I finished walking the dog and went inside and figured I'd check on, what that might have been the next morning because I didn't feel like going down there at midnight to look for like a blue light. There's a humidifier plugged in down there, and obviously the water heater. There's a couple of other things that are operating down there. I went down there the other day to check out what this blue light could be, and really can't seem to find. I turned the lights off. Really can't seem to find anything that is emitting a faint blue light. To the jury.
Blue light furnace, probably the furnace.
No. The furnace, the hot water heater, all of that. Anything that the humidifier, all of those do not emit the blue light.
Now, how bright is this blue light?
It's faint. It's very faint. I thought it was a reflection at first.
Does it move?
No.
Maybe you have a Peeping Tom Ghost.
Is that a thing?
Maybe.
It could be.
Could be, yeah.
Like a Peeping Tom Ghost that just stands there and like doesn't move and just peeps?
It's probably watching you right now.
It probably says put the lotion on its skin.
Oh, man.
I don't think it would be your furnace, and I don't think it would be the only thing. Like, do you have anything reflection outside that would hit that? Because obviously, I'm thinking that you have. Is there little small windows for the basement part of your house?
Yeah.
Is there? There could be any kind of reflection. Now, obviously, I would think you have street lights, right?
Yeah, there's street lights.
Okay.
They're not blue.
No, but it matters. Did you change any of the windows down below, or are they original windows to the house?
They weren't changed. They're not the same windows as what's in the house, but I don't know if they're the original windows.
It could possibly be you could have a reflection coming off that gives it a blue tint that's not necessarily blue.
I like where this is going.
Because typically I would say it's an orb, but it's not moving.
Right.
So if it's just sitting there, I think it's a reflection.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. I like this.
Okay, now an orb. Tell me a little bit about an orb. Isn't that supposed to be maybe more of a positive sort of entity that may even interact with you?
No, it could be a demon.
Oh shit! Okay.
So but typically, an orb is just a spirit. So what it could be your residual spirit. It could be a poltergeist. It could be a demon. It could be, Sally Mae that died down the street and she's hanging out now as a floating ball in your house. But the thing about an orb is that essentially the theory is that ghosts feed off electrical, right? So that's why some paranormal investigators, when they are filming, they'll be like, well, my camera just completely died and all the battery life was drained out of it because a ghost just took all of that. So now, essentially, you're saying it could manifest and show itself. But typically, they say that the regular form of a ghost is a orb.
Okay.
I am in my attic, my office attic, surrounded by electricity right now.
So if anything goes out just unexpectedly, you might have a ghost in your house.
For a second, I just wanted to click out a Zencaster, just like blip away.
If it would take a little time, I think it would take living there probably. If all of you're having right now really is the door, I don't think you really have anything to worry about just because of how old the house is. Now, if you start having things like happen to me, then I would possibly say, yeah, you probably have something there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a slow burn to go from Lance from Crawlspace to Jack Torrance.
I don't know, Tim. Might not be that slow.
I feel like anybody can turn into Jack Torrance in less than 3 seconds.
We are.
Well, the
we have
quarantine-
been been isolated for a few weeks here.
It does
Yeah.
make things a bit more stressful, doesn't it?
But you'll start noticing things more because you are quarantined.
Right. Okay. So I think that's my verdict as one of the jurors here. I think you're just a little hyper aware right now. You just moved into this house, these surroundings. I think give it a couple weeks, you'll be like, "What blue light? What are you even talking about?" And we'll be laughing about this whole thing. Like that.
See, there we are. We're laughing. We're all laughing about it. Well, no,
But you know what ghost you really want to worry about, Lance?
No.
The ghost you really want to worry about is if you're taking a shower one night and all of a sudden you feel something grab your ass cheek. That's a ghost you want to worry about. Yes, there are ghosts that are considered they will rape you or molest you or whatever.
Is this from experience? Did you
No,
have your?
this is not from experience, but because I would be very freaked out.
This is from Ghostbusters.
But yes, there are stories of this happening, yes.
Well, Bobby Brown said that he was raped by a ghost, or he had sex with a ghost, right?
I'm sure Bobby Brown was on every drug known to man.
Tim, if you hear anything in the audio, once you get this audio, if you hear anything in the background, just don't tell me about it.
No, I
Tell me
will
about
blast it out. Oh, I will blast it out on Twitter. Don't worry about it. All right, Jared, what is your verdict here in Lance's haunted house?
I think right now it's too early to tell. So I would probably revisit it 30 days.
Okay.
Okay, we'll revisit it at the next full moon, because tonight is a full moon. So in the next full moon, we will revisit.
Oh,
You don't have a
boy.
werewolf.
Well, maybe I do.
All right, fellas. Well, let's get to this creepypastas. Let's read some of these.
So I did actually bring 2 creepypastas, and I have never read them. So I don't know what they are about. All I know is that their names. And I didn't pick at long ones, so we don't have to worry about sitting through 20 minutes of reading. The estimated read time on this is 1 minute. This is called Jack Black and Infinity. In Beantown, Nebraska, a town with a population of just over 200, there lives a man named Jack Black. Not the Jack Black, of course, but just a guy named Jack Black. At 10:06 p.m. on January 4th of 2014, Mr. Black's phone will ring. Upon picking up the receiver, Jack will suddenly be able to comprehend the true definition of infinity. And for a split second, will be able to truly understand how long an eternity is. The massive strain on the collective consensus of existence that this paradox will create will actually cause the fabric of space-time to collapse on itself, creating a new universe identical to ours, but starting at the beginning of time. This universe will proceed to exist until the exact moment in time that humans would identify as 10:06 p.m. on January 4th, 2014, at which point an alternate Jack Black will pick up his alternate phone, thus comprehending infinity and starting the whole process over again. The end.
Huh.
Okay. It's a bit sci-fi.
Bit sci-fi, a bit Twilight Zone, maybe?
Yeah.
I felt like whoever wrote this, I mean, obviously it was written in 2008, but it's almost like the actor Jack Black stepped into the Avengers.
One of the major problems I have with this story, I love the ethereal feeling it gives you, but I can't get Jack Black, the actor, out of my head when hearing the story.
Right. And I think obviously that's where they got the name from. I mean, if I had to rate it, like, we rate ours 1 through 5, that story's a 1.
Ah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about. I mean, alternate realities, that kind of thing. It's bringing up that topic. I mean, we could do a whole hour about that. So,
Yes.
But we don't have to.
That is
So
right.
are we left to believe that he received a phone call from like an alternate version of himself?
Right.
See, I guess what I'm saying too, though, is a really good one of these would keep us talking for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So I think maybe it was okay. It was okay and interesting. We're thinking about it. We're talking about it still. But
How about this? I'm gonna pull something on y'all. I'm just gonna go to top ranked. How about that?
Yeah.
Because you can actually sort. If anybody's never been to creepypasta.com, you can actually sort by ratings and length and authors. Randomly selected page 5. This one has an average rating of a 7.77.
okay.
Oh, okay.
And it's only a 1-minute read time. It's called Inescapable. Why do we feel so safe in the light, with nerves of steel so free of fright? When darkness lies round every bend, and sleeps inside the most trusted of men. For even with the sun riding high in the sky, all its light is undone if you just close your eyes. Within that darkness, behind closed lids, lie all of the things we feared as kids. All of the monsters under our beds, all of the voices inside of our heads. Just watch the news or read a newspaper. You will see it runs loose in so many places. People eating people while they yet breathe. Mothers killing children in ways hard to believe. Vicious murders and rapes, death, pain, and sorrow. Yet more news will break when you wake on the morrow. So when you think there's no place in reality for monsters, remember the taste of this creepypasta.
Oh, bravo.
That was actually pretty good.
That was
Bravo.
very good. I like that a lot. I like the points that it was trying to make, that there is a darkness out there. But why do we act like there isn't when it's daytime? We walk around like everyone's safe when in reality we know that's not exactly true.
This is bravo again. Very topical, very sobering. Very sobering. I really dug it.
Yeah, I did too. I like the rhyming aspect, but a couple of rhymes, they tried to rhyme paper and places.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that one doesn't work.
I'd say maybe they did that just for the jarring effect, just because you thought, what are they going to rhyme with places here, or paper? What are they going to rhyme with paper here? And then they jar you.
They could have used maces.
Yeah, the
That's true.
last line didn't rhyme either, but I do like a good rhyming poem.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and obviously I've never read that one before. So, and that's actually the first poem I've ever read from Creepypasta. So,
geez, well, your cadence, your rhythm is really great.
Is impressive.
Thank you.
I did like the lullaby aspect to this, as if it's coming from childhood. So, all children are afraid of the dark because of what they can't see in the dark. So it's the fear of the unknown. And it's all the same, though, if you just open your eyes to the world around you today.
I agree with that. I think that the way the poem was telling was that we are in a world full of monsters, whether it be, like we talked, paranormal that's in Lance's basement, or whether it's actual really people, like, the cases of Dahmer, or, anything that could be considered dark. And I think I like the aspect where it said, where it's talking about inside of your head, because nobody knows what's inside of your head. Only you do. And I like that they threw the news in there as well, where it's like the news constantly reports on the macabre.
Yeah, you have to dig to find something good.
Right. And there's not as much good. It was kind of like, what is it? The nightly news used to do. Everything was bad, 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 bad. And they give you this last shit at the end that's good. And it's like, 3 minutes long? But I just listened to 30 minutes of death and destruction. And you gave me 3 minutes of good.
Oh, see, this is exactly why this one ranks high on the list. What did you say it was? A 7.2?
7.77.
777.
Now, are these all anonymous authors on Creepypasta?
No, but that one was anonymous.
Very
Damn.
cool.
Some do actually put their name on there.
Have you ever written one?
I have never written a creepypasta. I've actually got several ideas for books and some other things that I've wanted to do, but I've never sat down to actually sit there and actually do them.
Have you ever read a creepypasta that legitimately, genuinely scared you?
No, not really. It takes a lot really to really scare me.
What is the scariest Stephen King book that you read?
Ooh, that one's a tough one. I love The Shining, and I love Doctor Sleep, but I would have to say, with those probably being my favorite. I mean, I guess if I was putting myself in the shoes of, being in The Shining, I think there was so much suspense in that book. And obviously I know the movie is completely different from the book, but I would say that was probably, I guess, if you were in those shoes of, of the wife, the mother, and the child, and having your father completely going nuts, chasing after you through a hotel where nobody else is at, that would be scary. And especially you don't have anything, but your father has an axe.
Yeah.
Very true. Yep. I'm more of a Pet Sematary. That's the only book that I couldn't finish the first time I started it.
Pet Sematary is so good. That's another one. Now, Pet Sematary would probably scare the shit out of me just because of what it deals with.
It's there are moments in that book that I read it when I think I got started early with horror and stuff. I read that when I was probably like 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to there was one part in that book where I couldn't even, I read it and I had to pick up something else. I couldn't finish it.
Yeah. That's a terrifying movie. I never read the book. I should go back and read that one.
It's all dread. It's not jump scares. The movie does a really good job actually depicting it, but
that's horror. I mean, that's horror at its core, is dread.
Yeah, dread.
Mm-hmm.
Just nothing good's happening. Nothing
Right.
good's going to happen. No one's coming out of this okay.
Somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always look, if you pick up something horror, there's going to be death all throughout whatever piece of horror it may be, whether it be film, book, game, story. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's always going to revolve around dread and death.
Now, why are you attracted to horror?
Probably because I'm fucked up.
No, I mean, no. Well, I don't know if you're effed up or not.
No, I'm not
Jeremy,
really, but I think it's hard to answer. I've never really sat down and actually thought why I have been so engulfed with horror. I as a kid, like I said, when I first saw my first horror movie was Child's Play, and that interested me more than what some other kids are watching. I was like, hey, have you seen Leprechaun? You know, I would have rather watched something of that nature. And I don't know. I've never really, like Stephen King, the first Stephen King book I ever read was in middle school. I was into it. And the first Stephen King book I ever read was it. Yeah. And I don't, that's a hard question. I've never really thought about it, I guess. I just always been enthralled with it.
It's definitely tough to identify in oneself, I would say. I think people have a lot of theories. Some people say if you've been through a crazy tragedy, like maybe something bloody, or you're a survivor or something like that, you're not going to be a horror fan. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the more innocent you are, the more of a horror fan you are. But I've definitely seen conflicting cases using that theory.
Yeah. That could be part of it, though, because that seems like it has some legitimacy to it, and I've heard people who have been through something, a car accident or something, even people who have been mugged, and they don't like that, they don't like their feelings going in that direction. But I think with horror and fear, like, there's not a lot of emotions, and I think fear might be the only emotion that it's really genuine and yeah. Probably the hardest to fake. Like comedy, if you have a genre like comedy, it's hard to make someone laugh. You really have to know your audience to make somebody laugh. It's almost the same thing with fear, but like the laughter is one thing. When you genuinely feel afraid, that probably does something the way tattoos are addicting, or hot sauce is addicting, right? Like something.
Or falling in love, even.
Yeah, right. Something fires in your brain, like the endorphins go in your brain. A chemical rises, something clicks, there's sparks, and I think that might be addicting. I think it might be addicting to, walk around your house in the dark and not know what's around the corner, because you like the feeling of being afraid.
I love the feeling of getting shin bruises from walking around my house in the dark.
I'm sitting in the dark, by the way.
I pictured you in the dark.
Yeah, I was born in the dark, so I guess it would be, my reason would be why. So I guess if you're interested in, say, serial killers, right? What would be the topic of interest for you of a serial killer? Mine is why. What makes that brain tick different from mine to make them think that this is okay? And in their mind, they're thinking it's okay. That it's, and then you have some serial killers where it's, I know it's wrong, but I have to do it, or otherwise I'm going to go crazy. Yeah. So I guess the why factor, because, when you watch a horror movie and you watch somebody, it's like, oh, maybe we should split up. Dumbass, why are you splitting up? So that's that same question of, why are you doing that?
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't think that would be such an interesting answer, because I was such a horror fan, and you kind of get caught up in before you mature into the true crime genre, you do get caught up in a little bit of the romance of the serial killer. And I didn't think I would be as fascinated with the criminal profiling aspect of it, which tries to define the why, and reading books and articles about case studies and from doctors and FBI profilers. And they go into, the behaviors of these people and what that could possibly be on a biological level and a scientific level, what is going on, and accounts right from the mouths of these serial killers, these people who have done these things, and that's the real terror. That's what that creepypasta story is all about.
You're the real terror, Lance. Well, Jared.
Well,
Jared,
that is a great way to wrap it up.
Jared, thank you very much for joining us here tonight on Crawlspace, a late night edition of Crawlspace with Jared from Even the Podcast is Afraid. It was a lot of fun talking with you about all these topics.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and we're very excited about joining the Crawlspace family.